Well, from Time Digital, in a moment, we'll find out more about Discovery's new bank. But the bank that hasn't yet launched, but everyone is talking about, is called BankZero, founded by a crew of ex-FNB staffers, senior executives at FNB, including the former chief executive at FNB, Michael Jordaan, in our Cape Town studios. When do you launch? Because Time Digital is in Pick n Pays, and this week we'll have 30 points of presence. Discovery's told us they will launch in March next year. You're keeping that little light under a bushel so far.
Yes, Bruce, so we're a little bit behind because we started much later. We're currently busy with alpha testing, which is the testing that staff do. Early in next year, in 2019, we'll start beta testing, which is a broader launch into the public. And then the final launch we're expecting in the middle of 2019.
Time Digital is looking at the Pick n Pay customer, the base of the cards, 10 million potential customers there. Discovery is looking at its own customer base. You don't have pools to dip into. Who's your customer?
Yes, certainly that is one of the distinct disadvantages that we have. We don't have a brand. We don't have any distribution infrastructure out there. We're the true startup. We're the little David fighting against the Goliaths. Our target market would be anyone with a smartphone, and importantly also all the small businesses and businesses that have employees that use smartphones. With all these disadvantages that I've sketched, there are also some distinct advantages, such as a really low cost base, very modern technology, completely new features that we've developed. And most importantly, maybe, is the fact that it's all on a smartphone. You never ever have to speak to anyone, you never have to sign paperwork, you never have to go into a branch, and we're going to leverage all of that in favor of customers. So we see our customer base as the 19 or so million South Africans that have smartphones.
Yet you've got to reach them and convince them that you're not just going to be a fly-by-night. Lots of people have been burned through VBS, for example. You're structuring yourselves as a mutual bank. It's a slightly less onerous requirement in terms of the Reserve Bank, in terms of setting up. A lot of damage is being done.
Yes, I think so. Whenever there's a banking crisis, customers are used to running for safety, a flight to safety, and that's very logical, and in a certain sense that's quite good. You know, you should keep your eyes open and you should be careful with whom you bank. The fortunate thing about South Africa is that no retail depositors have ever lost their deposits. So we have an implicit deposit insurance scheme. Not that that is something you should rely on, but it really is a fact of the South African banking system that overall it's very sophisticated, great players that withstood the financial crisis. I think if you don't allow for any failures, then you also don't allow for birth and for new licenses to come in. So what's very exciting about the system right now is that there are a couple of new entrants. They're certainly challenging the status quo. And the best thing for consumers is that they are the ones who are going to benefit.
The last time the status quo was challenged was a little bank called 2020. They got to about 40,000 customers. And the banking sector, including yourselves when you were at FNB, responded very strongly to it. At the time, internet banking was quite foreign to South Africa. 2020 made it cool and trendy, and you guys had to play catch-up. You know that the established players are not going to let you get away lightly. How are you going to resist the onslaught? Because it will come.
Bruce, you remember very well. I think 2020 was quite an exciting venture. I can say that now that it's no longer a competitor. But in their case, their cost base was also quite high. And one has to be very, very careful to give a first-class service at a price of an economy class ticket. And I think they ran into difficulties quite apart from the association they had with Sambo, who failed at the time. So yes, we do expect the big ones to have a go at us, and I certainly think the functionality which we're going to launch, and it really is world-class features that we haven't seen in any of the other neobanks in the world, things that customers really want, those may be copied over time. And I have no doubt that they can be copied. The big disadvantage that the big incumbent banks have in South Africa is a very, very high cost structure. That has built up over 10, 20, sometimes over 100 years. They rely on older technology, and they have a big physical infrastructure. Those are all the things that you as a newcomer don't have. So we hope to leverage all those things kind of in our favor, but ultimately in the favor of the customer.
The comfort of the bricks and mortar bank is there. You can go in, you can shout at a teller, at a branch manager, find out the name of the chief executive of the bank and get a head office number and shout at them. In this new world of invisible banks, there's no one to shout at. There's no one to cross at. You either open an account and then close it, and you never come back. How are you going to manage customer relationships in this world?
So the interesting thing is, if you had to redesign banking on a blank sheet of paper from first principles, you wouldn't have huge head offices, and you probably wouldn't have branches in every mall in South Africa. So WhatsApp It doesn't have branches, nor does Facebook, nor does Instagram, nor does Twitter. And we've got a whole generation of people who are actually quite comfortable interfacing with these apps, provided they are world-class and nothing goes wrong.
And I don't give them any of my money to look after. That's the big difference between banking and social media.
Well, the interesting thing is if you look at the trust that people put in certain of those tech brands, whether it be Apple or Microsoft or Google or Facebook, they actually rate them more trustworthy than they do some of the banks.
Before Cambridge Analytica, for example.
That's also true. I think Facebook has not covered itself with glory there. The point I'm really making is that there is an old model, and that model will work for some people. And they won't change their habits. They don't even mind if they stand in a queue. They don't mind if, there's a lot of paperwork to be done. But there is a new generation that is conversant with smartphones, that has grown up on apps, that are digitally native, that also don't expect to pay bank fees for something that a whole lot of other apps provide for free. So we don't have to convince the entire market. We just have to convince the digitally savvy consumers who feel that they are paying too much and are looking for features that they don't have on their phones at the moment.
Sandile, who we've just seen, is going to trim down to a staff complement of about 100. He's got the mighty African Rainbow Capital behind him. Adrian Gore, the reports are that Discovery will have 3,000 staff, and they've got the mighty Discovery balance sheet. You've got you and a couple of mates, and what kind of balance sheet behind you in order to start up this bank? You really do like to start from sort of the 100-meter race 20 meters before anybody else.
There's a whole philosophy about startups called the lean startup, and it really says that you should have a low-cost base because it makes your runway much longer. And it also allows you to, if you make a mistake, to change it quite quickly. So I'm involved in quite a few startups that follow that approach. It's just something I fundamentally believe in, not these big corporate budgets and long projects and huge capital expenditures. And then also it gives you the strategic advantage that with that low-cost base, the service you provide to customers can be very low. So yes, indeed, it's true. BankZero has a much smaller team, but it's a small team of highly competent people that...
and everybody's got a point to prove. I mean, each one of you has a point to prove. I mean, you would like to prove that you can stand up against the big players, of which you were once one. Your chief executive was once in FNB. Your executive team largely plucked out of FNB. They want to show that they can do it.
They're going to come back to new businesses, new startups. The ones that are most likely to succeed are the ones that are not only focused on profit. And you need to make a profit to keep the business going, but that have some type of mission or social goal.
What is the mission?
So in our particular case, we do believe that South Africans shouldn't pay the fees that they're paying for banking, which are significantly higher than they should be, not just for individuals, but also for businesses, which are such a key part of the economy, and also that South Africans should save more. So we are, and you spoke earlier about some of the damage that has been done in the banking sector, we are not focused on lending. We don't think we can make a big difference in lending. We think there's a whole lot of oversupply, in fact, of lending products in South Africa. We want people to save more through attractive interest rates and to save on banking fees and have better features. So I suppose you're right. We want to prove something, but the mission really is to make South Africa better, to make it more efficient and to help the economy grow, because we need that growth.
Are you doing this to flip it and sell it to somebody else, to create a model that some foreign bank will go, oh, we must have that, and sell it to them? Or are you in this for the long term?
No, we're in it for the long term. Warren Buffett has the saying that he says his favorite holding period is forever. And that's the way I look at the businesses that I invest in. It's not to make a quick profit. It's to really affect long-term change and to solve real problems in the South African economy. And I think that the way banks are structured, and it's not just in South Africa, but the high bank fees that they charge is not conducive to the efficient economy that we need to have so that we can grow at higher rates.
The chairman and the founder of BankZero, to be launched at some point, probably in the first half of next year. In a moment, to the Discovery head office in Johannesburg, and we'll catch up with Adrian Gore, chief executive of that company, launching his Discovery Bank this week.